Welcome to this KOIN 6 Winter Weather Special, Portland's winter weather outlook for the 2025-26 winter season. I'm KOIN 6 Chief Meteorologist Josh Cozart. Portland's winter season is one of the most impactful of the year. We can see everything from soaking rains to major snow and ice events during the colder months of December, January, and February. Basically meteorological winter. During this hour-long special, we'll reflect on last year's mild winter weather, while also taking a closer look at how the Pacific Ocean waters could influence the weather pattern here in the Pacific Northwest. And of course, we'll dive into what's possible for the 2025-26 winter weather season. Last year, Portland saw only 3 inches of snow. That's considerably less than the 2022-23 winter season, when Portland saw 11 inches of snow during the winter season. So let's talk about what the average conditions are expected during the winter months here in the Portland-Vancouver metro area. We'll start off with temperatures. December definitely the breadwinner for the coldest month that we see all throughout the season. Now, as we move our way into January, we're expecting to see those average daytime highs add up just a little bit. But you got to think about the lag of the cold temperatures. At this point in time, we are definitely lacking in the sunshine department. And we've also had a few cold days, so that's just going to continue to build up upon itself. That means we could have some variations, more extreme temperature swings from extreme cold to maybe even some mild conditions as we slowly start to gain the light. By the time February rolls around, our brand new average daytime high temperature should be right around the low 50s. That will be a welcome sight and can't come soon enough. But let's talk about what the winter season actually is. We're taking a look at the globe right now. So the globe sits on a tilt, and as we spin around and orbit the sun, that's where we see our seasonal changes. So with winter, the northern hemisphere, everything above the equator is tilted away from the sun. That means we are experiencing more of a shadow. So you can almost see it like this. Everything to the right of the earth is going to be cast in a shadow. That has a specific time mark. It just so happens to be on Sunday, December 21st at 7:03 exactly. So set your alarms now so you can actually celebrate the official start to the winter season. Now, of course, meteorological winter, we like to play that up on December 1st. But nonetheless, that's just an easier way for us meteorologists to kind of break down the seasonal months just a little bit more cookie cutter-esque. That way it's easier for us to really kind of time out our averages. But overall, we have seen some snowy weather events over the past several years. Here's a snapshot of the last 11. We have seen some form of snowfall every single year. That does include the 2024-25 season. That's where we managed to pick up on about 3 inches of snowfall just last year. Of course, that is a far cry from the 2022-23 season that we experienced, where we saw that 11-inch mark. And even back in 2020-21, that winter season, we saw some measurable snowfall, upwards of 10 inches, and we've seen some extremes, but overall, that trend has been snowier than years past. Over 11 years now with the measurable snow. Could we do it again this year? It is a very real possibility. But let's break down each month as a whole. So the month of December, typically we see our average temperatures right around 47 degrees for our afternoon highs. Overnight lows, they fall back into the mid-30s. And as far as the wet weather goes, we will see rain this month. I can guarantee you that. But will it be falling in the form of frozen precipitation? Still very much so up in the air. But that nearly 5 3/4 of an inch, that makes December one of the wettest months that we experience all year long. And I always like to look at the temperature trend so we can kind of get over that hurdle of the coldest average daytime high temperatures. So you'll notice we start things off relatively on the mild side, close to 50 degrees for the first day of December. As we fast forward closer to Christmas, we fall back to the coldest point that we see as far as our average temperatures go all year long at 46 degrees. That takes us all the way through the final day of 2025. And as far as snowfall goes, we have seen some measurable snowfall in the month of December. On average, we see just over an inch of snow. Now that means some years have not seen any snow at all, while others have actually picked up on some snowfall. So this is how it kind of has spelled out for the past several years for us. Yet to see any measurable snow in the month of December. We'll be keeping a close eye on that right here in the KOIN 6 Weather Department. Now, we've of course got to talk about the holiday season, Christmas. Will we see snow on Christmas Day? Well, the National Weather Service breaks down those statistics and only gives us about a 1% chance of actually having a white Christmas. That's taking a look back from 1940 to 2023. It's a possibility. It always is, but the likelihood is very slim. And we just saw back in 2021 a trace of snow, so I guess maybe you can consider that a white Christmas, but really not expecting to see a better chance of maybe seeing another white Christmas. So, hey, keep your fingers and toes crossed, and if we do enough wishing, maybe Mother Nature will follow suit. Now moving into January, 47 degrees, still that average daytime high, but this is a warming month for us. 36 the overnight low, and this is our third wettest month of the year, just slightly behind the month of November, where we see a good drink of water. Now, as we move our way through, of course, we're going to be picking up on some of that cooler weather to start the month, but then by the 31st, hey, 49 degrees. I think many of us will be happy to see that come our direction. And that's all because of us adding the daylight hours, or I guess in this case, the minutes. Every little bit counts to slowly help to warm up that average daytime high temperature. So in the month of January, Portland gains 57 minutes of daylight. That's definitely going to be a welcome sight for so many of us. Of course, we're going to continue to add the daylight minutes as we move closer to the spring equinox, and then eventually as we work our way towards the summer solstice, where the maximum amount of daylight is experienced here in the northern hemisphere and here in the Portland-Vancouver area. Now, of course, that's going to start to play into our snow potential. The more daylight you get, the warmer the temperatures are. That can sometimes increase that snow potential. January, just earlier this year in 2025, nothing. We saw no snow accumulation. Now, over the past several years, we have picked up anywhere from about a trace to sometimes back in 2024, over an inch and a half. Now, keep this in mind. We'll discuss it a little bit more in detail, but January sometimes has some of our coldest temperatures, and that can actually zap a lot of the moisture in our atmosphere and reduce the chance of any precipitation, rain, snow, or ice. So sometimes that comes into play during the month of January. Let's fast forward to February, the final month of the meteorological winter season. As far as our temperatures go, 52 degrees is that new average daytime high, but you'll notice our snow accumulation potential still remains just over an inch or so, and this is our fifth wettest month of the year, averaging a little bit more than 3.5 inches of rainfall. Now, will that rain transition to snow? Of course, it is still a possibility. And we are expected to see those warming temperatures, 49 degrees for February 1st, but then by the final day of February, that's where we're talking about mid-50s. That's a welcome sight for so many as we continue to add ourselves into the surplus of the sunshine department. So you'll notice the Portland-Vancouver area, a total of 80 minutes gained during the month of February. That is a sight for sore eyes. Of course, that means later sunsets, earlier sunrises. We just got to pack our patience and wait a bit longer for that to come to fruition and shake ourselves of these 4 o'clock hour sunsets. But overall, February, we have seen some monster snow events, all in part to, again, that temperature lag that we were talking about, the abundance of moisture, but also the slightly warmer temperatures can sometimes help fuel a lot of that snow development. So it was just earlier this year in 2025 where we picked up on 3 inches of snowfall. Now, we have had years with nothing at all. Just look back at 2024. But we've also seen some monster ones. It was 2023 where we saw over 10 inches of snow. Can't soon forget about that event. Could we do it again? It is a possibility as we start teasing the idea of a weak La Nina starting to take shape. So, of course, my colleagues will have more insight on how that plays into our forecast in just a few minutes. But winter snow totals just this past year, the 2024-25 season, only amounting to 3 inches of snow. Now, we were under a weak La Nina, and come to find out, as we listen to the National Weather Service later in this special, that we actually didn't meet the La Nina criteria. So that means we were in more of a neutral state. Overall, though, still seeing 3 inches of snow marks the winter season down as a snowy winter for us here in the Portland, Vancouver area. Now let's also talk about the high elevation of the Cascades. We like to see snow in that direction. Great for the skiers and the snowboarders, our water pack, the snowpack overall, and eventually helping to reduce the wildfire concern as we work our way deeper into, of course, the fire season that will be here before we know it. So it's a gradual trend, but we typically see the snowiest conditions or the most amount of snow piled up on Mount Hood and the Timberline Lodge area come April. Then we start that melting trend. It's a quick process, and we don't want to be too quick because, of course, that increases wildfire potential. But this is the trend we would like to see. Over 150 inches by the middle, if not the end of the season, would be a welcome sight. And we really kind of played along this track, November, December, for much of last year. Could we do the same? Again, with that La Nina potential, that has a better chance of coming to fruition. Now, I wanted to show you some of the unique shapes. Every snowflake is completely different, and it's different because of the temperature and the water vapor that is available in the atmosphere. This right here is what makes forecasting snow so difficult. You add in our elevation, that changes the temperature, that changes the moisture content. But it's with these different shapes that really make measuring the snowfall so difficult, or predicting it. That is all because of these dendrites. See how they have the barbs on them? Those barbs link up like this, and you'll notice there's a lot of space in between. That means the snow is going to be really light and fluffy, typically associated with some colder temperatures. Now, when you have the columns or the needles, those are all going to stack very lightly on top of each other. There's not a lot of space between them. So that means our snow is going to be more compact, maybe more icy feeling, if anything. That also leads to slicker conditions. So it's knowing what type of snowflake will fall really helps us meteorologists have a better understanding of how much air is going to be between the snowflakes that pile up on many of our surfaces. So I want to just kind of break this down. It's our water equivalent. So if it's 18 degrees outside, that means we're going to have a lot of those dendrites and a lot of extra air between the snowflakes that pile up. That's where you can see the snow is at its highest, maybe 20 inches. But if you look at temperatures, which it can snow above freezing 32 degrees, we see that quite frequently here. It just doesn't stay on the surface very long because, keep in mind, it's really cold up in the atmosphere where the snowflakes first form. But you'll notice it's only at 5 inches. All of these different layers are still the same amount of water when you melt it down to be equivalent to about an inch. So that's why it is so difficult for us to predict how much snow is going to accumulate, and that doesn't even begin to talk about the melting rate as it touches the surface, because even at below freezing conditions, you could see some melting underneath our feet. Coming up, senior meteorologist Kelly Barron and meteorologist Steve Pierce explain how the Pacific Ocean might impact our winter weather ahead when this KOIN 6 Winter Weather Special returns. Welcome back. Senior meteorologist Kelly Barron and meteorologist Steve Pierce explain how the ocean waters of the Pacific Ocean help shape Portland and much of the Pacific Northwest's winter weather during their KOIN conversation. Take a look.
Well, hey everyone, I'm KOIN 6 senior meteorologist here with a fun topic today. We're going to talk about what everyone wants to know, the upcoming snow season here in Portland. What does our winter 2025 to 2026 look like? And today I've got a special guest with me, our very own Steve Pierce, meteorologist that you see on TV the weekends a lot. Sometimes he's covering me in the mornings too. How's it going? How you feeling?
You know, I'm feeling like we got a little bit of La Nina brewing out there. So,
yeah.
We'll see what we can whip up for the winter weather.
Yeah, La Nina. You know, I feel like we say La Nina, El Nino, Enzo so much. What exactly does that mean? What exactly, or how exactly does that influence our weather here around the area? Can you give us a little bit of background of all that?
Layman's terms, we refer to it as ENSO, or El Nino Southern Oscillation. It's an index based on sea surface temperatures in the tropics. Specifically, as you see there on your graphic, it is sea surface temperatures right along the equator. And as your graphic says, we are right now cooler than average. So, and by that, I mean, if the sea surface temperature goes up and down each season by, say, even 1 degree Celsius, so a little more than a degree Fahrenheit, that's actually quite substantial because it alters the jet stream throughout the winter months in the northern hemisphere. And it oscillates back and forth about once every 5 years on average. So we go from neutral to warmer than normal. Yeah, that's a that's a perfect representation of what a
Yeah.
La Nina pattern looks like. And there you go. There's just a better chance for Arctic air to slip south of the border with a more active polar jet stream. And that ridge of high pressure is typically set up a little closer to the Gulf of Alaska during a La Nina winter, as opposed to just off our coast in, say, an El Nino year where we'd be very high and dry. So
Hmm.
that's kind of it in a nutshell. And it just kind of goes, it oscillates or undulates back and forth each
Yeah.
season. We start to see it about 6 months, 5 months, four
Yeah.
months in
I
advance.
think it's so cool how we're looking at ocean temperatures, like we're observing ocean water, and that has an impact on our atmosphere.
Yep.
And these Enzo or La Ninas and El Ninos, they often mostly impact the winter weather, not so much other seasons, right? We tend to see the most influence
Correct.
and changes come the winter months.
Yeah, it has a lot to do. We start to see the signals start to show up, usually in about May or June, sometimes as late as July or even early August before we can really tell where we're going with sea surface temperatures for the next winter. And a lot, when I say it impacts a jet stream, it has more to do with the amount of activity or tropical activity and energy, so to speak, along the equator, which that then alternates the jet stream. But yeah, they usually set in. We can see them by summertime, and that portends sort of what's going to happen, say 6 months later in the
Yeah.
wintertime.
So this year we've got a weaker La Nina setting up, which
Yeah,
is kind of similar to last year's pattern, you could say. I've got a list here of recent winter snowfall in Portland and the types of Enzo patterns we've had. So our most recent winter was a weak La Nina, and we saw 3 inches of snow. The one
yep,
before that was a strong El Nino, only 1.6 inches of snow. And then we had 3 consecutive La Nina winters, all with
yeah,
above average snow in Portland,
yep,
which kind of proves the trend true that we
yep,
tend to get more snow around the Pacific Northwest, the mountains, and in the city, in La Nina winters. So
yeah.
these are, important patterns that forecasters like to track just to get a little bit of an idea of what we might see this winter and to form that outlook.
Boy, and I tell you, these numbers are really representative, at least to me. What stands out are those even weak La Ninas or moderate La Ninas, 11 inches, 6 inches, 10 inches, as opposed to an El Nino, just 1.6 inches. Now, keeping in mind, that's the entire winter of, say, 23, 24, just 1.6 inches. And then neutral years, that 2019, 2020, boy, it actually, I remember that one, and it really acted more like an El Nino, in my opinion,
Hmm.
than it did neutral. Because neutral years, of course, for anyone who's watching, is the absence of either El Nino, warmer than normal ocean water temperatures in the tropics, or La Nina, cooler than normal. So basically, right at normal. I didn't coin the phrase, but I like to use it, La Nada. You
Ah,
know,
I've never heard that.
oh, you haven't? Yeah.
No.
El Nino, La Nina, La Nada.
Lanada.
Absence of
I
either.
I dig it. I really like that.
La Nada. So yeah. Uh, and if you were to take a graphic like this and extrapolate more data from, say, the Snowtel website up on Mount Hood at Mount Hood Meadows, or maybe say Government Camp, you're really going to see a difference in these La Nina winters.
Hmm.
La Nina winters don't necessarily guarantee Portland a
Right.
snow event or a big Arctic blast. It definitely increases the odds, but it's really noticeable in the Cascade
The
Mountains.
Cascades. I
Bigger
mean,
snow years. Yeah.
yeah, I was just looking at I crunched so many numbers when I was building my winter outlook, and just looking at Mount Hood Meadows data, that's at
Yeah.
5,000 feet up on Mount Hood. That ski resort, on average, they see about 460 inches of snow or
Yep.
430 inches of snow per season. But La Nina years, it is, maybe 2 feet more snowfall. You can really tell the influence. And some El Nino winters, it is just poor
Yeah.
season. And not saying
Yeah.
you can't get poor seasons in La Nina winters either, but that influence really shows, especially in those higher elevated, snowy, mountainous areas in the Pacific Northwest.
Boy, I remember I believe it was 2014, 2015, the first year I came to KOIN. That was an El Nino, and it was, oh, I mean, the ski resorts didn't even open, I think, until about
Oh,
MLK weekend in second week in
oh,
January. Yeah,
geez.
El Nino is big ridge of high pressure over the Pacific Northwest, and all we do is sit in the,
A very
I call it
dry.
split pea soup. Yeah,
Yeah.
fog, clouds in the valley, but it's beautiful at the coast and the Cascades and those El Nino where we get the temperature inversion.
Yeah,
But I,
yeah.
I don't expect a lot of that this winter.
No, it's a good bet if you are a skier that you should get your pass. Probably a
Yeah.
pretty good year. But you know what? We're kind of all excited about Portland snow. So
Mhm.
I've got another graphic here. This is data from 1970 to last winter in Portland.
Yeah.
And you can see all the La Nina winters we've had above average snow. The average is 4.5 inches for this about 55-year period. And El Nino winters, yeah, the trend seems to be a little bit lower than
Yep.
average.
Yep, and that's been like that. If you took this data back all the way, say to 1950, that's about the time they started really tracking El Nino, La Nina. Or we can get data from
Yeah.
back then, even though we didn't start doing it until the late 80s, early 90s. You'd see the same thing. In fact, I would argue there would be even a bigger differential between the El Nino and the La Nina winters, just because of the way kind of things have gone with seasonal snowfall, say in Portland, when you look each decade. And I think, not
Check
to
out this
jump ahead, but
graphic.
oh, there it is.
I think this is so interesting. Average
Yeah,
snow per year by
yep,
the decades. And you
yeah,
can clearly see the differences and the decrease in the amount of snow just
yeah,
in the last 50 years or so.
yeah.
Um,
And
yeah,
also,
quite the change. I mean, you weren't around in the 50s, Steve, but
oh,
maybe your
what?
parents were. Yeah,
That's true. That's true.
average per year about 9 to 10 inches
Yep,
in a winter,
yep.
like expecting that. We're at about half that now, less than
Yeah.
that. So
So interesting because I do want to talk about this. My family's been in the Vancouver area, Washington, since the World War II, when we kind of all migrated out here. Both sides of my family did from different parts of the country during World War II. And yeah, that's kind of back in that 1940 to 1950 bar there in the beginning.
mhm.
I think what I find this graphic very interesting because I've seen different versions of this before, and notice how we've kind of leveled out since what's that 1980-ish on average. Now that
Right.
means there can be very very dry years, no snow at all, and versus others where there's a little bit
Yeah.
each winter. Um, Two things. One, that's a sign of a changing climate, obviously, and number two, also a law. We our population out here in the Portland, Vancouver area has since 1950 has quadrupled, four times higher. So you do have a little bit of that urban heat island effect. And the reason why I make this mention or this note is the Portland airport's been at its current location since about 1938, 39, right in there. And then records start around 1940. And so, as the city has grown around the airport, the observations have been consistent with their location. So, it's a good sample to look at when it comes to sort of
Hmm.
urban growth, urban heat island, all that. Another thing that I want to say, even though it's not in this graphic, we have now had, if I've done the math right, 10 winters as of last winter. Maybe it was nine last winter in a row of measurable snowfall in Portland, and that I I looked at it last year. I don't think that's happened in our lifetime, like in
Hmm.
modern times. You have to go back to, I want to say it was back in the 30s and early 40s before we had 10 consecutive winters of measurable snowfall in Portland. Now, granted,
Yeah.
some of those years are itty bitty, point 0.5, that 19 or 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
It's measurable still. So that's an interesting sort of bell curve, and I think that plays in more to the PDO, which we're not really getting into the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. Yeah, there you go, right
There,
there.
yeah, you are right, Steve. Last, what, 10 years in Portland
Yep,
have
yep,
all seen measurable snow.
yep,
And I've been doing this uh, observation, outlook, and analysis for the last 6 or 7 years now. And I
okay,
remember, 2 or 3 years in, that was the first time that we had 3 years in a row of consecutive
yep,
snow, and now it's up
yep,
to this many, 10.
yep,
So
yep,
yeah, I think there are other atmospheric factors like the PDO, which is the
yep,
Pacific Decadal Oscillation, another large-scale global
yep,
shift of temperatures and air masses and
yep,
energy. But we're not going to
yep.
get into that.
Nope.
This at least in this
That's
conversation
next
here.
week. That's
That's
next
next
week.
week. Yeah, we'll get into the weeds there. But yeah, just talking about La Nina,
Yeah.
it does bring a good bet that we will see a little more snow
Yep.
maybe than average. Doesn't mean we will get it, but the odds are stacked in our favor. Do you want to share
Yep.
this graphic here? I don't know if it's hard to read, but this is just looking at the monthly snow. So
Yep.
kind of spacing out the winter and what months we tend to see the most action.
Yeah, and that is yeah, blue versus gray. I can see it. Yeah, it is a little smaller, but I can see it. So we're looking at December, January, and February. This graphic, what I find very interesting about this is and this is in La Ninas, correct?
This
If
is
I remember
just La Nina versus normal snow.
correct.
Yes.
Notice how it tends to be higher in December and February, but slightly lower in January. I didn't see this graphic until you created it. I didn't know what I was going to see on this one. But that is very interesting because I think this has a lot to do with a position of the jet stream early on in the season in a La Nina or slightly La Nina versus a position of the jet stream once you get, say, into the meat or the heart of winter
Hmm.
in January. That's very interesting.
I know. I can't figure out why that's been the trend. I believe this
Yeah.
is 23 years
Oh,
of
okay.
La Ninas, all in the blue, and then I mean this is data since 1970, so about
Yeah.
55 years for the gray bars.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean we really see that high pressure kind of shifting up, and it's been driving in more storms, so that odd for snowfall in December kind of upticks. But maybe there's
Yep.
some changes getting into January before it upticks
Yep.
again in February. Yeah, it's
Yep.
hard to say, but
I think it's all positioning of the jet stream early on in the winter months. We tend to get to say first or second week of December. We get into our first little Arctic intrusion or ability to
yeah.
draw some of that cold continental air through the gorge, and then yeah, the pattern just. I've noticed snow patterns in Portland tend to take about 30 days to cycle through.
Hmm.
So if we get a shot at snow and the right setup, we get the cold air dumping down from the north, some precip in off the coast. It'll take about 30 to 45 days to kind of work through that cycle again. We'll go into a different pattern. That would put us, say, into January. And then all of a sudden we see in these La Nina winters, we'll repeat the cycle again. 45 days later, now you're looking at, you're into a little bit of February.
Hmm.
So that's always been my theory. I
Hmm.
don't think I have a whole lot of data to back that up with, but patterns go in cycles and we kind of phase into one, phase out, of that one and into another one. So yeah, I thought I was really fascinated by that one. I would not have thought that's what the numbers would show.
Hmm. I do feel like in recent years, the last 5 or 6 years, the majority of our winters have been La Ninas, and we have seen some really big snow events in February.
Yeah.
And looking at last year, we we had snow only in the month of February. It wasn't a very big storm. It was still enough to break down the city and cause some delays and schools to go out for about a couple of days. And we also had just a little sheet of ice also in there
Yep.
in between. It was like it was right around Valentine's Day
Yeah. Yep.
that happened.
I remember it well. Funny, that's the
Yeah.
It was, was there a Valentine's Day? Oh, I'm thinking of the big Valentine's Day.
2021.
2021.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
That was when I skied through downtown Portland
Yeah,
on my
I
skis.
remember that.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to YouTube that. Check it out. It's a great video. It lives legendary. It's like that in the Lisa Balick interview where
Yeah.
she's joggers.
Oh, poor Lisa Balick. She
I
gets
know.
that brought up every year
Yeah.
since that runner in the snow biffed it.
Since it happened. I think that was 2012 when that video was
Oh.
shot. Yeah, I remember that. Ouch. Everybody was okay though. In
Yes.
full,
Yes.
In full clarity. So I wanted to mention something about this. Let me go back real quick to that 2021 Valentine's Day event. Notice I said big snowstorm. That was from about the Columbia River north into Clark County in 2021. That was a major ice storm in the Mid-Willamette Valley, mid and northern Willamette
Yes.
Valley.
I remember that.
Yeah, but Silverton, Almsville,
Yes.
Malala, Estacada.
So many trees downed, homes, wrecked by fallen trees or power lines, people out of power for weeks. I believe KOIN even put up some of our coworkers in a hotel for longer because their homes didn't have power, even in the Portland metro. But yeah, you're right. It was a massive ice storm for the Central Valley. But then into Southwest Washington, it was beautiful snow. And Portland kind of got a mix of both. A lot of snow, but sheets of or layers of ice in there too.
That's the class. This is why I love forecasting.
Yeah.
Right here in the Portland Metro. I know you do too. It's if we didn't have that little gap, that 5-mile wide gap called the Columbia River Gorge, right through into Portland, it would be very hard pressed for Portland to get the kind of snow that we do, because that's our tap to the really cold, dry continental air from the east and from Canada, and it funnels right down through. That was a classic scenario 2021 where the low came right up the coast and you had warm southerly flow up the valley, but it stopped it started transition right about Oregon City, Clackamas, and then it was more freezing rain and then snow to the north of that. And there it is. That was the 2021-2022 year. And you can see the La Ninas. I mean, you can pick out the La Nina years right in there.
Yeah. Oh boy. I remember that. So yeah, you're saying that kind of the mechanism for either a big icing event or snow event really has to be that frigid Arctic air coming through the gorge.
Yep.
It hits Portland, and then we get some low that comes in with the moisture.
Yep.
And there's always, with these low systems, that warmer tongue that comes up the valley from the south. And that can be that defining factor of whether or not we turn to ice. And, like you were saying, there's always that line somewhere in the Portland metro, somewhere south, that sees more ice because of the freezing rain profile and how the freezing rain sets up with the warm tongue and the layers of cold. It super freezes or super cools, and we can get that icing instead. So it really is such a tricky forecast for the winter, right in this region, just geographically, with the
all about the track of the low too, the
Yes.
center of the low pressure. As air flows from high to low. So as that storm comes in, if it goes just south, the center of the low goes, say, to Eugene, to Bend, to Pendleton. Whole northern end of the valley is going to be probably snow.
Mm-hmm.
You get any kind of a southerly wind component, because remember, the ocean is on average about 55 degrees if you kind of look year round, maybe a little bit, but 53 I think is the average year round. Boy, that's really warm air mass, maritime air mass. That's going to send the warm air in up above the cold air that's in place, and that's your freezing rain setup when the low goes slightly north of us. So it's fascinating to forecast in the Portland area, and I think it can be one of the most challenging places to forecast anywhere in the country
I agree.
because of all of these factors. I mean,
And
there's a
it
lot
seems
to
like
take into consideration.
Portland has gotten more icing. I mean, certainly in the last few decades, last 10 years even.
Yep.
I don't have any graphics up on that. We're specifically talking
Yep.
more about the snow, but do you have any kind of insight,
Yeah.
like what you're thinking about icing?
Uh, I think it's these borderline events that we get that are clearly going to be the icing setups because we get the cold air in here, but either we don't get any moisture in, we just kind of moderate out slowly. But when we do get the cold air in, it's all about that next system that comes in after the cold air is in place. Then the pattern changes. We get something in off the coast like a front, and they just happen to be trending a little further north. They
Hmm.
scour out the colder air from the gorge maybe a little quicker. But it's an interesting thought. I hadn't given that a whole lot of thought. The other
Hmm.
thing that I was thinking about was how we've transitioned into these. We didn't have February snows in Portland since I believe about February of '89. I'm sorry, February '95. So we're talking 31 years ago this February. All of a sudden we have this drought of no February snows until whenever that they started picking up again. I want to say maybe 2018, 19 or 17, 18. No, it was 2016, 17. I remember that 11.2 inch some. And now it's like we don't get it in December anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of pushing to later in the season.
Yeah, it is. And I don't have the answer for that either. It's all about the pattern that sets up and when it sets up. So, yeah, look at that right there.
Yeah, so we've got a fun event coming up on Saturday, October 18th. And Steve, you're a big part of this every single year.
Yeah,
It's with the Oregon AMS chapter that puts it
yeah.
on, and it is the Winter Weather Forecasting Conference. So we got a bunch of speakers that all
Geeks,
analyze
weather geeks.
recent snow data
Yes,
and
yes.
give their presentation and outlook for what they think. Got any words on that, Steve?
Oh, I got a lot. Number
Keep it
one.
short. We got like 1 minute left.
Oh, okay. We'll make it fast. You might see some TV people there
Oh
too.
yeah.
Yeah, come down this Saturday or whenever you're watching this. It
Mm-hmm.
will be Saturday, October 18th. If you see this after the fact, well, we hope we saw you there. It is free, 10 a.m. We give away a Davis weather station, which is really cool. And yeah, four meteorologists, including the National Weather Service, will give their outlooks for the upcoming winter, kind of specific to Portland, Western Oregon, and Southwest Washington. So lots of fun stuff. Couple hundred people there
Yeah.
every year.
I go every year, and there have been some big numbers. It's my goal to win that Davis weather station too. I need one on top of my roof, so I'm gonna
Me
put
too. Me
in.
too. We'll put another one at the Coin Tower.
Yeah. Okay. Before we leave, Steve, what is your prediction for the amount of snow in Portland that you think we'll get this year?
I'm going to do two things. The first snowflake will fly on December 1st. That's my guess because we do that every year at this
Okay.
conference. And
Wait.
I
So
think,
not collecting on the ground, but just flying in the air.
yeah, the ASOS, the automated system has to say SN or
Okay.
minus SN. So it's
Okay.
just got to see it in the air. And I'm going to pick that El Nino average. Even though it's not an El Nino, I'm going to go 3.5 inches
Yeah.
in one storm. I would be surprised if we get out of this La Nina with no snow.
Okay. So lower end of an average La Nina winter, safe
Yep.
bet. You know, I kind of agree with you. I'm going to stick with a February event, maybe 2 inches, and
Okay.
that's all this year.
Well, we're going to see. And where's my coin mug? If you win, you get a coin six watching out for you mug
Okay. And
and my chain.
if you win, you can have my phone. Okay. So
Nice. Did you say your phone?
yeah, take it from me.
Hey, hey, I like my Android. I like my
Yeah,
Android.
you're not an Team iPhone guy.
I'm
Um,
working on it. I'm working on it.
all right, that was an awesome chat. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
letting me
you
pick your
bet.
brain about all the winter weather we've had
Yep.
and giving us your outlook for this year. I hope you guys all enjoyed it, and you can catch both of us on Coin 6 News. But we'll see you around this winter.
Yep.
Great insight coming in from the KOIN 6 weather team. When we return, I take you inside the Oregon chapter of the American Meteorological Society's yearly winter weather forecast conference with a presentation from Portland's National Weather Service meteorologist in charge. Welcome back to this KOIN 6 News Winter Weather Special. Each year, meteorologists, forecasters, and weather enthusiasts all come together at OMSI for the annual Winter Weather Forecast Conference hosted by the Oregon chapter of the American Meteorological Society. This year, I wanted to share the presentation given by Portland's National Weather Service's meteorologist in charge, Tanya Francine. Take a look.
I'm here today. I'm actually with the National AMS. I'm the incoming commissioner for the Weather, Water, and Climate Enterprise, so that's technically what I'm going to call myself being here today. But my other routine duties are certainly with the Weather Service. All right. Currently, what is happening with the ENSO state? If you, I hope most of you are familiar with this, but there's 4 regions in the ocean that have sensors and data that we monitor. The yellow region is Nino 4, the red region is Nino 3, the black box is Nino 3.4, and then there's Nino 1 and 2. Nino 1 and 2 are usually the ones that are the slowest to respond. So as we go back a year, you can see what was happening around this time. We were all talking about things. Nino 4 was warmer, Nino 3.4 was colder, Nino 3 was colder, Nino 1 and 2. Nino 1 and 2, went through some little phases, kind of warmed up. But what we really want to look at is what's been happening the last few months. And you can see Nino 4 is getting colder. Nino 3.4 is getting colder. Nino 3 is getting colder and then a little warmer again. And Nino 1 and 2 is fluctuating in that colder level. So currently, they have to be 0.5 degrees Celsius below normal for it to be called a La Nina. And it has to be for 3 consecutive months. So like Mark mentioned, I'm calling last year La Nina light. I thought it was a La Nina until I went and looked at the data to put this presentation together. I'm like, wait a minute, there's a year missing. And then I looked and I'm like, oh, we didn't quite make it last year. All right, so the prediction for this winter that came out 2 days ago shows that the blue line, September, October, November, December, is La Nina. And then neutral is gray. So the blue line continues to dominate until the winter months are over. And we always say winter weather outlook. For me, again, you saw my background that he just mentioned. High Plains, winter starts like October 1st and it doesn't end until April 30th, right? But technically winter is December, January, and February. So at that point, we kind of transition and we come back to neutral conditions in that December, January, February, March time frame. And then kind of back to neutral all the way into next summer. So we'll see. It could be another La Nina light year for us. So let's take a look at past week La Nina years. There's 12 of them. If you eyeball this, which I kind of did to get this data here, in the Pacific Northwest in general, there were 6 winters that were below normal. 5 were above, and 1 was near normal. So 50-50 almost, right? It's kind of the crapshoot here. Which one are we going to get? And then the same with precipitation. You can see some years were extremely dry, like, whoa, what, this one to this one, that's a big contrast. I haven't had a chance to dig into what the differences were. That would be kind of fun to do. But you can see it's either all or nothing here with precipitation, except this year here. It looked like Washington did a little bit better while Oregon did not do quite as well. All right, this is for the weather geeks. I think Bobby said weather nerd earlier, but we're geeks. We're geeks. Just want to put that out there. I geeked out. I wanted to look, so I went back 10 years and I pulled up all the climate outlooks I could find, and I actually had to use ChatGPT to do that. It took a while to dig some of this out. But looking back, water year 16, the forecast was near normal to slightly drier. Okay, so the brown line, this is the precipitation. This is what's normal, and it said slightly drier, and we were well above normal. Okay, that was an El Nino plus year. That was Pretty strong El Nino year. All right, another weak La Nina year. We forecast slightly wetter. I don't know about you, but let's see, that's 36 inches to 52 inches. That's a lot wetter in my mind. Another weak La Nina year here in water year 18, and again, the opposite happened. So instead of being near normal, we were almost, 6 or 7 inches below normal here in Portland. So it's just kind of fun. I'm not going to go through each of these. This one here, I'm going to call it El Nino light, and this is my La Nina light. It was close, but just not quite long enough to make it. So when we talk about these predictions, you're going to see, slightly wetter. It was drier. Slightly wetter, okay. It was probably a lot wetter. This one here, slightly wetter. Nope, ended up slightly drier. And here we go. Equal chances. It was pretty darn close. And last year the forecast was for wetter, and we ended up just slightly below here at Portland. So I'd say take these with a grain of salt. It's fun to talk about the outlooks, but the bread and butter is in the next 7 days, right? So, all right, still geeking out here. Lots of data, lots of information here. So when I went back and looked at the snowfall in those 12 years, and I added the La Nina light just for fun. So we have 13 years here. When you ask me how much snowfall are we going to get, my answer is we could get none, or we could get 2 feet. Okay, that's your range I'm going to give you. We're either not going to get anything, or it's going to be 2 feet. And I heard some of you, when you walked in the door, I heard a couple of voices going, I love snow. You have not lived in the high plains. All right, here's one thing I found interesting. So 2008 and 9, I talked to Colby from our office, and we went back. This was right before Christmas, a big, huge storm that hit. Most of that snow fell in that storm. But when you look at the year, okay, this is your average precipitation for the water year, and this is what happened that year. We ended up way below normal overall, even though we had this huge, massive storm in December. So again, averages, normals, what's right in front of you? What's in the white of our eyes? And that's what we really need to focus on. So climate predictions can have skill in predicting seasonal totals and averages. They can have some skill, but you just saw 10 years where it was kind of iffy, right? Most impacts are associated with the short duration storm systems that we cannot predict more than a week or 2 out, regardless of what some private sector companies try to tell you. All right, I saw this last night and I just had to laugh. Here's your winter weather outlook. No one has any idea. Really. All right, so officially, Climate Prediction Center updated their outlook. I put my little pin here right in downtown Portland, but we can't get any closer to this line. So if you look at the pie chart probabilities that we have here, 33% chance above, 34% chance below, and 33% chance near normal. Who's gonna bet on that? Who's gonna bet on it? All right, precipitation just a little bit better. 36% chance above normal, 31% chance below, and 33% near normal. Anybody putting money on it? Bobby is. Bobby's got it.
Every year.
Every year, yep. So as we go through the 3-month time step all the way through the spring, you can see here December, January, February, March, February, March, April. All right, so we do trend overall. I'm going to say Portland now, not Oregon. Oregon itself is right there. It could be anything. A little cooler maybe, except for the south, who knows. To me, this is really too close to call. And then we actually go back to kind of the warmer than normal temperatures by the time we get into the summer time frame. So, I don't put any stake in my personal life on what these outlooks show. I don't, but I'm always prepared. I always have something in my car, my vehicles, my home. You always have to be prepared. All right, here's the precipitation outlooks. Now, if you like skiing in Montana, this sounds good to me. December, January, February, we've got the trend kind of just misses most of Oregon as we trend out of winter into early spring. and again, kind of misses us. And this year in April, we went downhill very, very quickly. Mark talked about the precipitation that they had out in Astoria, and I think you mentioned 6 inches in Oaxaca. You know what? Astoria had its driest year on record for the summer time frame since 1956. So, something to think about. So, I just thought, you know, what kind of terms? Don't put your eggs all in one basket. I thought there's got to be some new ones we can use. So, there's the Oregon quarter. You can flip a coin, right? But don't bet the farm on any of this. Spread your risk. You should always spread your risk. Never tie a single rope to your boat. One string alone does not make music, and a wise sailor doesn't depend on one wind. Some truth in that, right? So, my big thing here is we're talking outlooks, but really, are you ready? Okay. When I was in Montana, I played this 30 days, 30 ways game that Cressa hosted online on social media. And it was every day you had to do something to be prepared. And I ended up winning this kit. Little did I know I'd move here and they'd be my partners that we work with. But I did clean this out last fall. I took all the old stuff out, put all new in there. I restocked it. I have a bigger kit in my car. And the only thing I got called on by Corey Mashevitz from PBEM, he's their emergency manager, was I didn't have chains in my car. And I'm like, I lived in the high plains for 30 years. What do I need chains for? And I'm like, February 22nd, 2023. All right, so I went and bought chains. Those are in the car too. So, how many of you have a kit in your car? Gail, you better. All right, if you don't, start thinking about this right now. First aid kit in your car and a survival kit in your car. I went to the AMS annual meeting in Atlanta after Snowmageddon hit, and we did this Boy Scout event where we had all these Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops coming in to earn badges. And I asked all those kids, how many of you have toilet paper in your car? And they laughed at me, like, why would we have toilet paper? I said, how many of you had parents stuck on the interstate for more than 8 hours? And suddenly you saw their little faces like the lights came on. Have toilet paper in your car, people. It's important, okay? Questions? Anybody in the audience? All right, well, thank you for this invite to be here. I appreciate all of you, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the presentations.
Great information coming in from the National Weather Service and Tanya Francine, the meteorologist in charge. Now, I want to clarify what the difference is between weather and climate, because they can sometimes be used interchangeably, but they are two completely separate things. Let's first start off with weather. So weather happens each and every single day. That's why you watch KOIN 6 News, because you're a meteorologist here. We're giving you the forecast of what the weather is expected to be tonight, tomorrow, over the next week. Anything past that is a forecast, but a very loose forecast. And what we like to base off of what the climate typically tells us. What we see is the normal, or what may be average for this time of year, or the time of year for a seasonal change. So weather is really the broken down given conditions. That's talking about the big winter weather storms, or maybe a heat streak that pops up during the month of July. That is weather. Climate is what we anticipate to see, especially during our seasons here in the Pacific Northwest. Will it be snowy and cold? Well, there's always that potential, and there's not always an exact when it comes to climate. It's the broader picture that we see here in the Pacific Northwest. So as we start to dive deeper into the winter season, it's always a really good reminder that we should be prepared. Always have all of our winter weather gear, whether that be ice melt, a leaf blower, the ice scraper, because frost is definitely going to be something that we have to overcome, and maybe just have the snow blower on standby in case we see another monster winter weather storm as La Nina starts to take shape out over the Pacific Ocean. So in conclusion, Portland could see snow, ice, or maybe nothing at all. It's too soon to tell if the influence of a weak La Nina could send Portland into a cold and snowy winter. But what we do know is weather readiness, awareness, and action should be taken regardless of what Mother Nature sends our way. Just know that the entire KOIN 6 weather team is here to help you weather the storm all winter long. From everyone here in the KOIN 6 Weather Center, thanks for watching and keep an eye to the sky.